All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, feminist extraordinaire and hero Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, she was asked about Tara Reade's allegation against Joe Biden yesterday. She lived up to her lioness stature in that body on behalf of women, and she, of course, put her full support behind Tara Reade. She asked the former vice president to explain himself and took a courageous stand. Of course, that's not what happened. Instead, she said, quote, "I stand by Vice President Biden. He's devoted his life to supporting women, and he has vehemently denied this allegation." First of all, that is not true. Vice President Biden has never once vehemently denied anything because he's never been asked about it, despite doing more than a dozen interviews since Tara Reade came forward against him and facing dozens of questions from the mainstream press, including a more than 30-minute interview with Politico recently. But let's move beyond that. This is just too rich. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's entire brand in the Senate was sexual assault and Me Too. She was the one who led the internal Democratic charge to drive Al Franken out of the Senate. She was the one who wrote in November 2017 that Bill Clinton should have resigned for having a consensual affair with Monica Lewinsky while serving as president. Now, that's before I even get to Christine Blasey Ford. It's just too easy to show how these people are complete and utter hypocrites. Let's take a listen.
I believe Dr. Blasey Ford because she's telling the truth. And you know it by her story. You know it by the fact that she told her therapist 5 years ago. It was documented at the time. We have the therapist's notes. She told her husband, this is a trauma she's been dealing with her whole life. She doesn't want to be in a bedroom that doesn't have two doors. People knew that about her a long time ago. She told a friend a year ago. She told a reporter before Dr. Kavanaugh was ever named. These are the hallmarks of truth.
As we covered on this show, that evidence is nothing compared to the corroboration that Tara Reade brings to the table. This isn't just about Gillibrand, though. She was joined in the ranks by vice presidential hopeful Stacey Abrams. Here's what she said last night.
I believe that women deserve to be heard, and I believe that they need to be listened to. But I also believe that those allegations have to be investigated by credible sources. The New York Times did a deep investigation, and they found that the accusation was not credible. I believe Joe Biden.
Once again, let's check the receipts. Let's see what she said in September 2018 when she said, quote, "A Supreme Court hearing is a job interview for one of the most critical roles in our democracy. If there is even a hint of impropriety, let alone the credible allegations bravely brought forward by Dr. Ford, we should pause and thoroughly investigate." Just another hypocrite revealed for the world to see. Kirsten Gillibrand, Stacey Abrams, they are egregious stand-ins for more than 36 Democrats so far who have endorsed Joe Biden, but had contradictory statements on Christine Blasey Ford. For places like CNN, which wrote 29 stories about Mitt Romney's binders full of women, have written 6, mentioning Tara Reade, wrote 700 about Brett Kavanaugh. For all of the mainstream media reporters who called anyone who doubted Ford a rape apologist and an anti-woman pig. And for those of us who were on the other side, we see you. In a way, we thank you for giving us the evidence that we craved at the time, to show the entire world that you never cared about Christine Blasey Ford or Brett Kavanaugh, that you cared about power and you would do anything to acquire it. And what so many misunderstand about my role and approach to this story is I never thought it was a good idea to just print Julie Swetnick's obviously BS allegation against Brett Kavanaugh in the paper of record. I didn't think it made any sense to just publish rumors from Yale Law School or a party that supposedly happened in high school, which weirdly, none of the other participants can remember, in the most prestigious newspapers in the country or endless airtime on national television. That standard was insane from the beginning, but it was stuck to for Republicans and those found to be politically inconvenient. And after the standard has been set for the candidate and the media that the establishment Democrats like, it goes right out the window. As Jay Caruso over at the Washington Examiner put it, quote, "The issue is not that conservatives want the same standard applied to Biden as it was to Kavanaugh. We're making clear the standard that the press and the Democrats applied to Kavanaugh is not being applied to Biden and will go back to the Kavanaugh standard at the drop of a hat. But here's the thing. Now, we don't just have an inkling that the press and the opposition hate us and is unprincipled. We have evidence, actual evidence, that when an allegation much stronger than the one that was supposedly disqualifying for the Supreme Court of the United States was not strong enough for the very same people for the possible next president of the United States, it's over forever. We see you. We will never give countenance to your moral preening ever again." And Crystal, I mean, the Gillibrand one in particular is what got me, because this is a person long before Me Too.
Yeah.
I mean, sexual assault in the military, civilian tribunals, campus rape court. I mean, I can go on. This is like somebody who has been on this issue from the very beginning. And then here, I believe Joe Biden, he has vehemently denied the allegation. And what was really damning was that clip that I played, which is that those therapist notes from like 2012 were enough for you with Christine Blasey Ford. Tara Reade's mother's phone calls.
Hallmarks of truth, Saagar.
Exactly.
Hallmarks of truth.
Same with Stacey Abrams. I mean, like I said, you can roll the receipts right there. She said that there was enough credible evidence. It's a job interview. Well, you might never know. There's no due process. You don't need any of that stuff because this is all about the court of public opinion. Fine, we see you. That's really what this is all about for me.
Yeah. Let me tell, I mean, you know a lot about Kirsten Gillibrand.
Yes.
Let me tell you a little bit about Kirsten Gillibrand. When she ran, originally she was a member of Congress. She ran in this like rural upstate New York conservative district and won by a total accident of history, essentially. But when she was running there, she was a blue dog. She talked about how she shot her own Thanksgiving turkey. Like that was her whole thing. Okay, so then she ends up in the Senate. She got appointed to the Senate.
Clinton machine.
Right. Exactly. She maneuvered very effectively behind the scenes, which is what she's particularly good at, gets appointed to the Senate, and suddenly she's like Wall Street senator, and like that's her thing. And she sort of models herself after Chuck Schumer. She's Hillary Clinton 2.0. That's her whole thing. That's her base of support. Then, and by the way, so at the time, I ran for Congress during that time, and she did something that was very nice. She would let me come to her fundraiser. She would let me like say my spiel about who I was, etc. Very nice of her, and I still am grateful for it. One time after I gave my pitch, which was a lot about being a mom and how important that was to me and how that changed my view of the world, she pulls me aside and says, "Don't ever talk about your kids again." Okay? So that happens. So then, like a year later...
And she's a working mom.
A year later, she's working mom. All the emails are about being a mom and being in the carpool line and all of that. And then, in the Me Too era, she jumped out in front, especially, and basically threw, Al Franken under the bus, which had no sort of political consequences for her. A Democrat was governor. Another Democrat got appointed to the Senate. So it didn't have any ramifications in terms of political power for Democrats at the time, but she got to bolster her image as like the women's Me Too candidate. And now... Here we are, her standing right by her principles. And that's the thing is, she really tried to make this, that's why it's so egregious for her. She really tried to make this her brand, like being the women's candidate, like the Women's March candidate. That was how she framed her presidential campaign. And now that you have these, very inconvenient allegations, suddenly she believes Joe and not the woman.
Can't they come up with something better than this? Can't they say, I think Tara Reade should be heard out, and I think Joe Biden is a good man, and let's hear more from them? Why is that hard? That's
not hard.
That's really what I don't get. I mean, that would at least be semi-consistent to your brand.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, same thing. I've rolled the tape here about what she said about Biden's own accusers, about Christine Blasey Ford. Stacey Abrams says that at the time. I mean, Simone Sanders, who now works for Joe Biden in 2018, was all over CNN saying that the GOP now shows that they don't care about women. And like I said, I just want to point out that these people are complete hypocrites. And everybody knew it at the time, everybody who was subjected to it. And if you deviated from the line whatsoever, you were called some of the most vicious and terrible things that you can ever say about somebody, with no recourse to defend yourself, because none of the media was on their side at the time. Well, that's really what gets me.
You know what really is, so Stacey Abrams saying, the New York Times investigated this. They found that it wasn't credible. What a bunch of BS. And we know now, and we talked about this in the A block, that the Biden campaign is distributing talking points, telling people to point to the New York Times story, which was very biased in their favor, but did not come anywhere near saying it's not credible or it didn't happen or anything conclusive, because how could you say anything conclusive about this? And yet that is what they are all using now. And it's to me, it is absolutely outrageous to go that far and pretend like that story said something that it most definitely did not say. And adding to the level of egregiousness about it is the fact that we know the Biden campaign called the manager at the New York Times and got a particular key sentence in that story changed, and now we see why, so that they can hang their hat on the New York Times says that there was no credibility here, that this didn't happen, based on this sentence that's basically like, we did not find a pattern of sexual abuse. Very different from saying this particular thing didn't happen.
And what I truly believe there will be no consequences from this. And I know everybody wants to think otherwise. I think that the media is so in the tank for Joe Biden and all of these establishment Democrats who have all the power in our culture. I don't think he'll pay a single price. I think he'll maybe get asked about it eventually, and when he does, it'll be a one-time story. But in terms of
and they'll get to say, we did our job.
We did our job. Everybody's just going to sweep it under the rug. They'll wait for Trump to say something, and then that's it. It'll just go away. They will pay no price for. How many people out there are even playing these clips? I actually think it's just us. There's not anybody else who's out there checking the record on this. Everybody just wants to forget. Yeah, Fox, but like, who are they speaking to, right? Like, they're going to the people who already believe this thing.
Yes.
And it's like, in terms of the programming for MSNBC and CNN, it actually is effective. And that's the scary part to me. They can just sweep this thing under the rug.
They are pinning their hopes on nothing else comes out. Mm-hmm. And if nothing else comes out, I think you're exactly right. I think they're able to just sweep it under the rug, move on. Biden will get asked one perfunctory question. Look, we answered this, refer to my previous comments, and everyone will move on. And look, I really do understand people's position is, and it's what some of the liberal feminists have come to, basically well, we're not happy about it, but Trump is worse, so we're stuck with this guy. Yeah. Even though, we think that there's some credibility to this allegations. I get that. I get coming to that decision. It's not the place I am, but I understand why you would come to that place. But to pretend like it's not real, to pretend like it doesn't exist, to pretend like Tara Reade doesn't exist, is just blatant hypocrisy, given the stance that they have taken in the past. It's outrageous. It really is.
It is. And I actually know a liberal feminist who watched our interview with Tara Reade and said, you know what? I believe Tara Reade, and I'm going to vote for Joe Biden anyway, because I care a lot about the Supreme Court, and I care a lot about, and I said, fine. That's fine with me.
Right.
That's a totally reasonable position when you have a zero-sum election. But be honest.
Here's the other thing is, outrageously, Ryan as a reporter, Rich McHugh as a reporter, Katie as the person who first put Tara, on air. These people are getting blamed for helping Trump. No. This was all predictable. First of all, Tara tried to come forward earlier so that you could have dealt with this during the primary and people could have had full information. But this was all totally predictable. There were so many people out there warning, this is going to be a problem when you have staked a big part of your party around Believe Women and Me Too, and this is the Women's Party and all of that. You nominate Joe Biden, you were leaving yourself incredibly vulnerable. And that is not on Katie. That is on all these people who work behind the scenes in the media that covered up for him, and frankly, his competitors who didn't press him on it.
And Ryan Grimm addressed this in his newsletter. It was really excellent, where he talked about, he said, look, he said, people think I'm hurting Joe Biden. Maybe I helped him because now it's not going to come out in October. But at the end of the day, I'm a journalist, and I decided on the first day of my career that I can't stop reporting the news if it's going to help or hurt a political cause that I don't like. Because the moment you do that, you're a political activist.
That's it.
Seriously, real credit to Ryan. Real credit to Rich McHugh. If you think that they're not suffering massive social consequences because of their courage in order to continue to just do the very basics of their job.
Do their job.
You have no idea what has probably come their way and the amount of vitriol and remembrance that the Biden campaign and a lot of other very powerful people in Washington will remember for even daring to talk about this story.
Yeah, but we know you all will have their back.
Yes, you will. All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.